Hello and welcome to another episode of Cycling Rajput und Cyclisme. I hope you really enjoy it. Today we have got the former national circuit race champion, Jo Tindley. She's a really nice, pleasant person to chat to. Like, honestly, we could have made an episode about triple or quadruple the length if we really tried. We thought 40 minutes would be plenty. I don't actually know what the runtime is, but it's about there. We talk about mentality. We also talk about racing with Lotte Kopecky and a lovely race at Aarschot, which amuses me greatly, just to say as a race name, to be honest. We also look into the future and see what she's got planned this year and what the whole Pro Noctis team have planned. And it's quite exciting because they're making a big step up. So yeah, take a listen, see what you like, see what you think. Do all those good things, and we'll speak to you again at the end.
Hi Joe, thank you so much for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me and reaching out. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Lovely. As people will have heard in the introduction, that you're a former criterium champion or circuit champion, depending on how you want to phrase it and the official terminology, I guess. I think let's start with that. How was that for you? Because I believe that was the Lincoln course, which is certainly, I'm led to believe, local for you as well. Like, how was that evening?
Yeah, I think that evening itself was actually quite what I'd call magical, really. It's one of those, you try hard and you aim for winning national titles and stuff, but then to do it on a local circuit, I worked at the Magna Carta, and have all the local people was just, I'd say it's pretty much a dream come true with regards to, if you're going to win a national championships, where are you going to win it? On your home turf. So it was incredibly special, that moment, and one to remember.
Did you put any extra pressure on yourself going into that race? Did you go into it going, it's local, I have to put a performance in, I have to win this? Where was your head at going in?
So I wouldn't say I put pressure on myself. It was a case of 8 weeks out, we found out it was at Lincoln, and halfway through that year, I said that I wanted to really target the national championships. And at that point, we didn't know where they were, because obviously they were in October. I'd come across from a UCI team to Pro Noctis at the time, so I'd kind of come across halfway through the season. I did an unbelievable amount of work on my mental preparation. I spent 8 weeks out working really closely with Phil Kelly from Pro Noctis on human performance and mindset, and learning how to win, and everything I needed to do to go into that race in the best position I could be, like mentally, physically. And it took a lot, it took a lot of putting in boundaries with people, and to the point where at that time I was a sports therapist. I worked from home as a sports therapist, and I sort of sat down with Phil. I was like, right, I'm targeting the national. I'm going to win the nationals. Like, this is my thing. And I said, right, 4 weeks out, I'm stopping my business. I'm closing my business down for 4 weeks. Didn't want to get COVID, didn't want to get ill, wanted to really commit and fully put everything into this one race. So that's how far I went. And I had several meetings with Phil on mindset and on how I spoke to myself. The language you use in your head is just the most powerful thing ever. And I hadn't won a bike race for a while. I hadn't won a road race, and I just didn't know how to win. So this preparation I did with Phil was ultimately how to win. And we had a plan, and that plan happened. Like, the simple as that. The whole evening was a blur. I absolutely love racing, and the reason being is my brain just switches off and I just get into a really good state of flow. That whole evening planned out the way that I had imagined it prior to that. I had to win solo. I wasn't going to outsprint sprinters. I haven't got a sprint, so I can't sprint. So I had to be solo at some point, and I had to plan it out, even to the point where I imagined myself riding up to the start line, where I was going to be positioned, how I was going to start, when I was going to go, and it just like unfolded like that. But I went far too early. I wasn't planning on going on lap 2, but I committed, and that was it. This is the plan. This is what's happening, and it was all in. So yeah.
Gosh, yeah, because I remember I was watching it when I think I was doing shopping, because I tend to on a Friday night. I remember just hearing it and having it on my headphones and just hearing, like, essentially it's just you off the front throughout, almost from the gun, I feel. Which, I mean, yeah, you couldn't have gone earlier, I don't think. So yeah, it's crazy.
I think the fundamental, like the biggest thing here is, yes, that's how I imagined it to go, but there's absolutely no way I could have done that without my teammates. Now, I, at the time, once I crossed the line, I was like, well, you know, oh geez, and all this sort of thing. But when I watched it back, I mean, the way they rode, like Corin deserved to win that race, you know, and she came third. She come third. I can't remember now. God, it's terrible, isn't it? But she was on the podium with me, and obviously came across the line and crashed, but absolutely committed herself. And there's absolutely no way I could have done that without those girls. And this is the thing, it's like, as much as I'm like, oh, you know, this is what I imagined and stuff, but when you watch what went on behind, you can't express that, like how that felt to see that and what those girls gave for that to happen. You know, it wasn't an individual result at all. So
yeah, that's what I love about cycling, though, is that it's this weird quasi individual sport, in that, like, yeah, the individuals get a lot of the plaudits, but you'd be nothing without a team. But equally, you have to win alone. Like, it's so weird. Like, all the miles and kilometers that, you know, Christine Margeris did for SD Works in the TDF, like, she's doing all that work for Demi, and Demi's the one who gets lauded as this super talent. But without Christine, without the rest of the team, she might not win, you know. And it's wild, but it's also incredible. And even, as you say, on the solo breakaway, you'd go, oh, that's entirely down to the individual then. But you've just made the argument that it wasn't. You know, you still needed your team helping you out there. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, well, at one point that gap came down to only 16 seconds. So it went out and it came back down to 16, and I'm pretty sure they could see me. Now, at that point, you know, when you look at the maths of it all, I should not have been able to ride away again from that. You know, it's a case of all it had to be was like Hannah Barnes and Abby Smith and another rider just to really start working together, like committing together to work. That should have been shut down. But like they just never got organised enough, and the girls were interrupting any kind of significant chase, and it went back out again, and it just kept going out. So I think it's having that concept of like, well, I train all these hours by myself, I'm doing all this training, investing all of this to then go do loads of stuff for somebody else in a race and then take the credit. It's just like a really hard concept for some people to get. But yeah, it's funny. It's a strange sport. It really is.
Yeah. And also, like, when you talked about language and how that matters, I think it did remind me of something I saw on Instagram. It was ages ago now, about like the importance of how you approach things in a similar way. And it's like, for me, it's about like cornering. Like, I'm not a good bike handler. But the person had put in a caption, like, instead of saying like, don't mess it up, say be brave. And it throws it into positivity rather than a negative statement. And I was like, and it worked. I was sort of railing it around corners and just lobbing it in, because I was like, yeah, might as well. What was the sort of, without going into obviously too many details and you know, into actual stuff that Phil taught you, like, what was your biggest learning in rephrasing and learning to win?
So I think it sounds really silly, but it's keeping it really simple. I had 3 positive affirmations that I kept going over and over in my head. You know, and these were like, it sounds really, and you can be so big-headed. Like I don't like showing off or saying I'm the best or anything like that. I would never ever put anything else like that online. But in my head, you can afford to talk to yourself in a way of, I am the best, you know. How am I going to show them? Well, I'm going to go do this. I am the best crit rider, you know. And it was literally simple stuff like that I was talking to myself about, you know. It's that, but you have to say it and believe it enough that it starts to work, and you start to believe what you're telling yourself. And another really good thing that we did was visualization. That was incredibly powerful. Like, it was plan B, plan A, plan C, you know. We had all these different plans, and it was like, right, this is the golden one, this is what I want to happen, you know. And I went through every single stage of that, and there was a point where we'd gone through it so many different ways and different times, and I just felt like there's something missing. And it was just like, all of a sudden I just started smiling, and Phil was like, oh, what's made you smile? I said, do you know what I've been missing with all of this? He's like, what's that? I said, well, when you win a race and you cross the line, there's photographers, you know. I was like, oh yeah, I need them there. That's what's going to happen, you know. And it was just little things like that I just had to really work hard on. I wouldn't say that I'm a negative person, but my self-talk's not great. Like, you know, it, like with anybody, it's oh, why did you do that, stupid? And it's like, no, like, you know, let's look at this and change the way you speak. But it was funny because it took so much out of me, that because the nationals were in October, we also had the road race on the Sunday as well. It literally, I then went straight into off season, so I had a week off the bike. Well, I had 3 weeks off the bike, but I felt so overwhelmed by everything that had happened that the following week I just felt lost, because I'd put so much into the weeks leading up to the nationals that it was just so intense and so direct and so planned that it just suddenly stopped. And I just remember calling Dean Downing, who's my coach, and just like nearly crying, going, I need to talk. I like, it's just stops. And I found that quite overwhelming, you know, like all this big build up and then just stops. And then you kind of like, all right, well, I just won. That's what I've been training for. And then you're kind of like, oh, like, it sounds really silly, but it just stopped. And I really struggled with after that, you know. It was kind of like, I put all this work in, and all of a sudden it's like, now what? I just don't ride my bike for 3 weeks. So
yeah, I've had that with a few things, like massive family engagements or like a 30th birthday party. It's all this build up, and then when everyone's gone, it's like, oh. And sometimes that can be nice, and it's like it gives you tranquility, and other times it can be almost lonely. And it's like, especially I guess that year, with it being in October, there's no more races. You can't immediately get into your GB skin suit that you've earned, and it's just like, okay, back to work, I guess.
Literally it. But it was a funny year anyway because of COVID, wasn't it? You know, I started the year riding World Tour races like Amstel Gold, like really early doors. So for me, it was a really long season anyway, and I was at the point where I was like ready to stop. And I wouldn't normally race in October, you see. Naturally, it probably suited me quite well because I do get better towards the end of the season. But for me, it was like I had that whole year was like a big emotional roller coaster for me. You know, I just think it all just built up, you know, and especially the work that I put in pre-nationals as well. But it just stops. That's it. Job done. Like, yeah.
And then what was the year like wearing the British stripes? Like, does it put a target on your back, because those stripes are saying I'm the best in the country here? You know, does that put pressure on you internally, or is it all externally and everyone's looking at you to do a good performance?
It's one of those things, right? You dream of being national champion, and then when you're there, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, I am national champion, this is pretty cool, and then it's like, oh man, I'm national champion. Like, you know, and I struggled a little bit with that. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy it the way that I thought I was going to enjoy being national champion. Also, remember that the national championships were back in June again, in that year. So I only had a few days. So I had like a local crit, a small crit in the national champs jersey. I did Gisborough the first round of the Tour Series in the national champs jersey, and then was in the sprinters jersey or leaders jersey for the Tour Series. So I rode 2 races I Telelai races. So I had March here at the beginning of the year, which I won, then Fakenham, which I won in the nationals, and then Gisborough, where I came second. So I had 3 races in the national champion stripes. So for me, I felt really sort of, oh, is that it sort of thing, you know? Because now I've lost it. Because I went full gas into the national champs that year, genuinely was in a really good place and messed that up, you know, and I made a big mistake. So I think I would have liked more time in it. I would have enjoyed it and grown to learn to like it. But then I think I've always had a target on my back when it comes to crits, no matter being national champ or anything like that. I just feel that I can't breathe without somebody responding. Like it's just the way that it is. But I don't think it changed the dynamics of the races as such. They did watch me more, I guess. And they don't let you get away with anything. You know, they're not going to, not when with that stripes on your back, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. It is quite striking, actually, that early you were like, oh, I couldn't win in the sprint. I was like, I watched you in the Tour Series that following year, and like you were getting top 3s all the time. Never quite a win, but you were getting top 3s.
But yeah, so then so my mindset towards the the Lincoln Nationals was, right, how can I win? I haven't got the sprint. What do I need to do? So I worked on my mindset to work around that. Okay, then brilliant. How do I work on I came into the winter and I'm like, I need to be a better sprinter. I won my first race out of a sprint like that year. So I had to work on my sprint that winter, knowing that I had to, the age that I am and the experience that I've got, every year I have to step up. Like something has to change. So I changed the way I ride. So then I've worked on my sprint. So now I can win bunch sprints sort of thing. So it evolves. But I never quite won a Tour Series. I have come second a million times. Never won one. So yeah. I worked on my sprint, but it needed more work at that point. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean you've had wins since then. A couple of domestic and one in Belgium, I believe. And also in Belgium, I think one of the most insane results that I've seen was getting second behind Lotte Kopecky. I was like, what's going on here? Like, what was? Yeah, that was like the Chalcels, I think. I've probably said that horrendously wrong, and most Belgians hate me.
Yeah, it was our shot crit. Yeah.
Ah, yes, that's the one. But yeah, what was that like to race against the current world road champion, and you're getting second ahead of, was it Tiff, who's like also a domestic rider but from South Africa? Like, yeah.
Yeah. So it wasn't my first experience of racing with a world champ. So I've raced with Marianne Vos when she was world champ on the road. So I've done the women's tour with her. So I know the quality of rider when you're world champ. Like I the last images I had of riding with Vos as world champ was that I was seeing red and I was trying to hold on to her wheel as it lined out coming into a park in the women's tour. So I know what a rider is like at that level. So there's a bit of an interesting story with this crit actually. So it's what they call post-tour crits, and they often use riders like Kopecky or yellow jersey riders of the Tour de France as a bit of a draw and a showcase, you know, that brings the crowd. So I was aware that Kopecky was riding, and as far as I'm concerned, Kopecky's going to win. And as a fixed race, it's Kopecky's win. You know, it's standard, isn't it? Gotta let you know, that sort of thing. So we set out, and there were 3 other pros in that race. I think one from Alpecin, one from Lotto Destiny, and another pro rider. And then the rest were kind of like club teams like Urson, Hutchinson, and stuff like that. So the race played out, like I was pretty like, yeah, nice, that's pretty cool. I'm stood next to Kopecky, you know, this is pretty cool. And I was there, I race, like I don't just go to ride round, I'm there to race, you know, as far as I'm concerned, there's a finish line, you know, that's it. So the race set out, and I knew that if a move's going to go, it had to have Kopecky in it, full stop. It's going to be that's the move. So these moves kept going. It's like 5 riders would go up the road and they'd be out there for 2 laps. The next thing you know, Kopecky's on the front, grilling it like this, closes the gap down in 1 lap, and we were lined out. And I'm like, oh man, this is insane. Like she just sat on the front like a train. She did this 3 or 4 times. Like she let these riders go, bit of a showcase coming through the line for the sprints and all this sort of thing, you know. And she sort of would just bring them back. And I was like, right, we're halfway through the race now. We're going to have to make a move at some point. Something's going to happen. And I was like, if I'm going to be in a break, it has to be with Kopecky, full stop. Right. So that was my game plan. Anyway, all these preems were happening and we came across the line, and it went across the line. It was a proper hairpin across tram lines. So it was like dodgy as anything. And then back up. Anyway, Tiff got a bit of a gap coming in the preems, I think, and strong, like indicate like her is a unit, you know, she's pretty strong, right? So I was like, right, okay, so she's gone up the road. I'm like, no one's responding here, and this gap's going out. She's turning the screw, and I just thought to myself, I rode another 500 meters, and I'm like, I have to get to that. If I don't get to that, that's race over. So I went across to Tiffany, a massive effort to get to her, and we're away. I'm like, oh, nice one. I was like, okay, we're going to get drawn back in here. Anyway, lap after lap, we're still away. We're both coming through pretty hard. We're working really hard together. Anyway, like this kept going. I was like, there's no, they haven't caught us back yet. I was like, okay then. Anyway, I looked behind, and I was like, Kopecky's coming. And I was like, I just got really emotional, and I nearly cried. I was like, this is a dream come true, because this is a race winning move here. She came across to us solo. So I said to Tiffany, I said, Kopecky's coming. You need to be prepared that if she comes straight past us, we need to get on it. I said, we're going to have to dig deep, expecting Kopecky to come past, right? She didn't. She joined us and started working through with us. And we're like, oh, all right then. So I'm there going, oh, yeah, this is so cool. This is like a dream, you know, like the dream race has just played out into my hands. How you know, you racing with world champ, you're getting a breakaway with her, you know, you're coming into the finishes of 3, you're going to be on the podium with her. Like that all was going through my head. I'm just there going, this is insane. Anyway, it carried on, and I kept looking behind. I'm like, they're not coming, and we just kept going. So I'm never going to beat Kopecky in a sprint. Like I know this. Like I've got no delusions on that whatsoever. But I needed to beat Tiffany. You know, I know that Tiff's strong, and I wanted at least second. Anyway, came in. Kopecky's like, so Tiffany's on the front. Kopecky's here. I'm on Kopecky's wheel, and she keeps looking at me as though I'm going to attack her. And I'm like, I'm no threat. She's like this at me all the time. Anyway, she just launched her sprint to the finish, and I sat on her wheel, like, and it only must have been only like a metre or 2 off her wheel into the line. And I was just like, this is insane. I hit an all-time power PB of over 1100 watts to hold it. Like that's a big, I've been trying to get over 1000 watts for years. Anyway, I was just like, oh my god, this is amazing, this is so cool. Anyway, it turned out, so we were in the tent together, and I said to Kopecky, I was like, we were chatting about the worlds and all this sort of thing, and then she said something to Tiff like, oh well, it's their fault. So the race was meant to be fixed, so it was meant to be top 4 were fixed, so Kopecky and these 3 other pros were meant to be the top 4. No one told us, okay, like nobody told us the race was fixed. I just assumed it was meant for Kopecky to win. So but the poor girls behind from our team, I'm up the road, so they're naturally going to be, you know, not chasing and all this sort of thing. So the pros were screaming and shouting at like Bexy and Corin and Millie and all this sort of thing, like screaming at them. And the poor girls didn't understand why they were getting hammered and battered and elbowed and stuff. But the pros missed the move. They didn't go with Kopecky. They couldn't go with her. And it just so happened it planned out like that. Anyway, we were like, oh, okay then. So there's quite a story. So I had like a fabulous race, and then the poor girls on the team just got absolutely battered, like shouted and screamed at and all this sort of thing. So yeah, I mean that's a pretty cool podium photo I've got. That's like, you know, I just loved every minute of it, and it just planned out, and I just was fortunate that I thought about it and got in the right move. You know, I took a risk going across to Tiffany because I would have been like gassed out. But sometimes you've just got to take that risk, and I'm there to race, you know. So it's a case about reading the race, thinking about it logically of like, right, well, you know, if Kopecky's not in it, it's not going to go, you know, simple as that. Yeah. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. Like some people knock the sort of post-tour crits because they say, oh, it's fixed, you know, we know who's going to win. And there are times where you're watching them on TV and you're like, yeah, okay, like Saitama, I know who's going to win this. Like, but equally, it's still the stories you get from them are still like hugely exciting. Like I think it might have been Dean, actually, your coach, who had one where he tried to buy a rider off, or the rider tried to buy him off.
Yeah.
And he got so wound up that he just sprinted past him anyway.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's so crazy, like that those stories happen. I think it's amazing. And speaking of coaching, and if that isn't an elegant segue, I don't know what is. What's it like coaching, firstly, and as a sort of topper to that, how would you actually coach yourself, if that makes sense? If there were two of you, how would you get on with coaching yourself?
Okay, we'll go with the first one there. So
Yeah, of course.
I never set out to be a coach. It was never ever on my agenda. So I've worked with Dean since 2019. So he's coached me since the winter of 2019. I've learned an incredible amount from Dean and everything. And he's always said, "Oh, I think you'll be a good coach." And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. Like that. So I finished my degree in sports therapy, so I became a sports therapist. That was where I earned my money. And then obviously COVID happened. But prior to that, I got approached by a few people to mentor young girls. So I was like, yeah, all right, I like the sound of mentoring and all this sort of thing. And there's one young junior that I was mentoring, and I was allowed onto her training peaks, just to help her out mentally, with that side of things. And I was just almost like every day, like, oh, why is your coach setting this? I don't understand the logic behind this. And I was like, getting really frustrated. And she wanted me to coach her, and I was like, I'm not coaching you until I get a qualification. Like, if I'm going to coach, I'll do it right, but I'm not a coach. Like, I'll put that there. So I had, some good chats with Dean and all this sort of thing. And I was like, no, I'm not. I'd rather be a mentor. Like, I'm happy if somebody wants to come to me for mentorship, then that's fine. I'll do that. It's easy enough, and I'll still do my sports therapy. So COVID obviously happened, and I had to finish my degree during 2020. And I literally used up all my savings just to get through COVID, because I couldn't work as a sports therapist. Like, you get no help from the government and stuff. So I ended up sort of thinking about coaching, and I thought, I really want to help this young girl, because at the minute I just feel fundamentally what she's doing is wrong, and I just want to really help. And so I then messaged Dean going, so what do you think to this then? So I spent my last 250 quid in my bank on a coaching qualification, and then started coaching this young girl. Really enjoyed it. I was like, okay, this is cool, I can do this. Then it just sort of started flourishing, and I kind of, Dean was like, if you're going to coach, do it with me down in cycling. I was like, man, that's pretty cool. Like, I grew up watching Dean and Russ race. I was on the junior ODP and stuff like that while they were the seniors in the GB team. So I know exactly where they've come from, and I used to absolutely love watching them, and was like, oh my god, they're so cool, that sort of thing as a junior. So I was like, that's a no-brainer. So then it's just flourished from there, really. And I tell you what, it's the most rewarding job I've ever had. Like, it genuinely is. You have so many ups and downs, but that feeling of somebody achieving something, it doesn't have to be a win. It could just be that they've done something really well in training, or they've overcome something. But then I've also got on top of that I race with some of the girls that I coach, so I can see how they're performing in races, and I can be like, no, move up here, or do this, or follow me, get on my wheel, and I can help them. So for example, Corinne Side, I mean, I watched her at Guildford Crit do a move, and I was just like, I'm so proud. So I was just like, yes, you did it, your first podium. And I get to see that from that perspective. So I'm really fortunate, but it's the most incredibly rewarding job ever, period. I just love it. So it's kind of escalated from there. I because since I won the nationals, I closed my therapy business down. I'm just a coach, and I do a bit of work for one of the sponsors. So it's brilliant. I love it. So
yeah.
Going back to, would I coach myself? Bottom line is no. I firstly love working with Dean. I love the contacts, and the calls that we have, and we can just discuss things. And I just I'm quite a lazy bike rider, so I don't like riding my bike. And there's a really good example literally last week, actually. And Dean was like, right, go out into the wolds. You've got a 5-hour ride out in the wolds. I want you to do 4 3-minute efforts at these watts up a climb. Actually, there's no structure. I went out and it was just like, I don't know what to do. Do I do it here or do it here? And I just didn't do them very well. But if you'd put the structure in for me, I'd have gone, bam, here we go, nicely done, 3 minutes there, 3 minutes there, job done. So I can't have freedom. I need to be told what to do. I am terrible at looking at my own training peaks. Like he's constantly just like, I have no idea about my training. I just do it. Okay, I don't care what my numbers say. I don't care. It means nothing to me. But when I look at my riders, it means everything. Do you know what I mean? Like I really understand that. But for me, I'm like, yeah, whatever. What do you reckon, Dean? Yeah. So he just does it, and I just follow it, and that's it. I don't miss a beat. So nice. I trust him. I don't like the thought of firstly having to sit down and plan my own training. Then I'll just second guess myself, and it's just I like having structure, and I just like that. Switch my brain off, follow my training peaks, and that's it. If that makes sense. I could easily coach myself. Like I know, you know what I mean? I know exactly what I need and how to do it. I just like having that accountability with somebody else, if that makes sense, and that contact that we have. So yeah, I probably would be absolutely fine coaching myself, but I wouldn't enjoy it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It's always interesting because it's like, you know, I tried to be a teacher. I was like, how would I teach myself? Would I actually enjoy it? And I'm getting elements of that with my daughter, actually, or my eldest. There's so much of my personality in here. I'm like, I would have hated to teach myself because of how she is. I'm like, yeah, that wouldn't work as a collaboration, really. I'd just push all my buttons and annoy myself. As a student, so it just wouldn't work. But we are unfortunately running out of time. So I guess one question to ask you is like, what's the future got in store for you? What are you looking forward to this season? And also, how can people keep up with you in terms of social media?
So this year we've obviously stepped up to Pro Conti. So our season will look incredibly different from last year. Although we will be supporting the national series. I've got a little bit, I feel, I don't know, I just enjoy racing, and I think I just want to keep doing what I'm doing. So whether that's UCI level or not, you know. So we should have some big races coming up, which will be a big challenge. You know, I've worked a lot on my sprint, so I'm hoping that I'm going to be a little bit of a different rider this season. But then I still want to do all like the national crit series and stuff like that. So I'll be buzzing about either way. And you can follow us on Instagram at FinishLineRT, and everything's posted on there with our website and stuff like that. So there's always going to be race reports and everything else going out on what we're up to. So yeah, it's going to be a big year for the team. Definitely, it's a big step up. Should give us more opportunities as well. Some great sponsors on board as well, so it should be good.
Yeah, that's hugely exciting. Well, thank you so much for your time, and yeah, hopefully we can see your name on some results sheets coming up.
Fingers crossed.
Well, there you go. That was a lovely little chat we had. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did recording it. Hopefully we'll have Jo on again at some point to do more of an in-depth look at her career and even her beginnings. So yeah, because we kind of just started right in the middle. I don't mind that sometimes, but I hope to bring further understanding of her as a racer and as a human as well from where she started. So thanks for listening, and as you'll see, credits are scrolling by. Always thank you to Lena. Without her, to be honest, this podcast interview thing, whatever you want to call it, would not exist. She gave me the real impetus to start and get going with this. And thank you for Jo for providing so many of the photos that we've used in this interview. Until next time.